Rick's going to do great things as our new regional operations director. My name is Richard Thompson. I'm 52. Bill Patterson just handed 7 years of my work to his 25-year-old son who'd been here 4 months. This was complete garbage. The conference room smelled like stale coffee and broken promises. Everyone clapped. I clapped too. Had to. Michael smiled like he'd earned something. Fresh MBA diploma. 0 field experience. Nothing. Bill stood there grinning. His son. His little prince. Everyone knew it. Nobody talked about it. Rick's been invaluable getting Michael up to speed, Bill said. Like that made it better. Like 7 years of perfect evaluations and working weekends was just preparation for his kid. I nodded. Happy to help. Meeting ended. People shook Michael's hand. I gathered my stuff. Moved slow. My head was clear now. Like when you wake up at 3 a.m. and suddenly understand exactly what's been eating at you for months. Bill caught my arm. Rick, stick around. We stood alone. He loosened his tie. Tried to look apologetic. Bill was 58, soft gut, thinning hair combed over to hide the bald spots. Got his position when his father-in-law stepped down. Same exact thing he just pulled with Michael. I know this might surprise you, he said, but Michael brings fresh perspectives. Sure. You understand, right? Nothing personal. I looked at him. I understand perfectly. He relaxed. Good. You're valuable, Rick. Valuable. Not valuable enough for the promotion. Valuable enough to train his son. I walked back to my desk. Office buzzed with normal activity. Phones ringing, keyboards clicking, people solving problems. Same old routine. I opened my laptop, stared at the screen. Then I started typing. Started at Atlas Construction Solutions, March 2017, right after my divorce finalized. Needed a fresh start. Defense facility construction across Texas seemed solid, something to build on. Honest work that paid $85,000 and let me sleep at night. You know how it is when you're starting over at 45. Army taught me plenty about engineering and leadership, but civilian corporate world plays by different rules. Spent 10 years in the Corps of Engineers building bridges and managing construction teams across 3 deployments. Good training for this work, except the Army promoted based on performance. Corporate world? Well, that's different. Bill hired me himself, shook my hand, said they needed someone with my background. I'd spent 8 years at my previous company before budget cuts eliminated my position. At 45, starting over sucked. But Bill made it sound promising. We're expanding fast, he said during the interview. Lots of opportunities for advancement for the right people. I became the right guy. Worked weekends when material deliveries were delayed. Stayed late when military inspectors had questions. Handled security clearance documentation across 6 government projects. Built relationships with contractors from Houston to El Paso. Army habits die hard. Show up early, stay late, get the mission done. Performance reviews were perfect. Bill always smiled. Always promised bigger things. Your management material, Rick. Just be patient. Patient. I was good at being patient. Army teaches you that. My son Tommy visited every other weekend. He was 18, heading to community college. Smart kid. Noticed when his dad looked tired. Sometimes he'd find me at the kitchen table Sunday mornings. Laptop open. Project emails. Dad, it's the weekend. Just catching up. Building something good here. He'd shake his head. But he understood. His mom remarried a banker who worked reasonable hours and coached youth soccer. I was the dad who worked too much but sent tuition money on time. Never missed his games. Had $1,800 alimony payments every month that reminded me why this job had to work out. When I told Tommy about the possible promotion, he got excited. My dad's going to be a director, he told his friends. Now I'd have to explain why that wasn't happening. First red flag showed up 8 months ago. Bill mentioned his son might join the company. Smart kid, just graduated with his MBA. I nodded, thought nothing of it. Companies hire graduates all the time. Start them entry level, let them learn the business. But Michael didn't start at the bottom. Started in the office next to Bill's with the title project coordinator and a salary I could only guess at. Bill introduced him around like visiting royalty. Michael's going to observe our processes, learn how we operate. Michael observed by sitting in my client meetings, taking notes while I explained federal compliance requirements, asked questions that showed he didn't understand the basics of what we did, but he was polite and eager, said yes sir and thank you like his mother raised him right. I trained him because that's what you do. Help the new person, even when the new person's last name is Patterson, even when his daddy signs your checks, even when you start to suspect where this is heading. See, defense construction isn't like building shopping malls. Government contracts require security clearances, federal compliance documentation, specific material certifications. Miss one regulation and the whole project shuts down. I learned this stuff over 7 years of dealing with military procurement officers who don't mess around. Michael was sharp enough, but book learning doesn't prepare you for a colonel calling at 6 a.m. because someone delivered the wrong steel specifications, and now his base expansion is 3 weeks behind schedule. I knew for sure 4 weeks ago. Stayed late finishing quarterly compliance reports, going through contractor performance metrics, federal regulation updates. Office was empty except security. Headed to the break room for coffee when I heard voices from Bill's office. Door was cracked open. Sound carried better than people realized. The board's going to ask questions, Bill was saying. Michael's only been here 4 months. Deeper voice. Older. James Wilson from corporate. You said Rick was ready for promotion. Rick's solid, but Michael's family, and he's got the MBA. Board likes degrees. What about Rick's experience? Bill laughed. Not mean, not kind either. Rick's a good worker, reliable, but he's not executive material. He'll keep doing what he's doing, make good money. Everything works out. I stood in that hallway for 45 seconds, listening to them plan my future. Michael would get Henderson's old position, the same position I'd been working toward since 2017. I'd train him, support him, pretend to be grateful. Rick won't cause problems, Bill continued. He's got a son, alimony payments. He needs this job. He'll fall in line. He'll fall in line, like I was some horse being broken to saddle. Like 7 years of loyalty had earned me the right to be grateful for scraps. I walked away quiet. Didn't want them to hear my footsteps. Went back to my desk. Saved my work. Left the building. Drove home in complete silence. Couldn't sleep that night. Kept thinking about Bill's words. My ex-wife always said I was too accommodating. You let people walk over you, Rick. Stand up for yourself for once. Maybe she'd been right. Next morning I came to work different. Watched Michael closer. Noticed how Bill included him in executive meetings while keeping me focused on day-to-day operations. Saw how other managers started deferring to Michael on decisions that should have been mine. 4 weeks later, sitting in that conference room, watching Michael accept congratulations for a job he hadn't earned. I knew what I had to do. Bill thought I needed this job, thought I'd shut up because I had bills and a son and monthly alimony checks. He was wrong about everything. Opened my laptop, started typing resignation letter. Hands were steady. Head was clear. For once in my life, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I submitted my resignation letter at exactly 4:30 p.m. Friday. Bill had just returned from walking Michael around the construction yard, showing him what he called his domain. I knocked on his door, handed him the envelope. This is my 2 weeks' notice. Bill's face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, then something that looked like panic. He tore open the envelope, read quickly. Is this a joke? No, sir. You can't be serious. You're leaving because Michael got the promotion? I stayed quiet, let him fill the silence. Bill stood up, paced behind his desk. Rick, let's be reasonable here. You're upset. I get it. But walking away from 7 years of building your career, that's not smart. I've made my decision. What about your son, your responsibilities? There it was. The leverage he thought he had, the reason I'd fall in line and keep quiet. I'll manage. Bill's tone shifted. Got harder. You realize how this looks, right? Quitting because you didn't get promoted. It's unprofessional. Childish. I nodded. I can see how you'd think that. I won't give you a good reference. You understand that? Walking out like this, leaving us hanging. No company's going to want someone who throws tantrums. 7 years of perfect performance, and now I was throwing tantrums. 7 years of staying late and working weekends, and now I was unprofessional. That's your choice. Bill sat back down. Tried a different approach. Look, Rick, I like you. You're good at what you do. But Michael brings something different to the table. Youth, fresh ideas, vision. Vision, I repeated. The board wants innovation, New thinking. Michael represents the future of this company. And what do I represent? Bill paused. Experience, stability. Those are valuable too. Valuable enough to train his replacement. Not valuable enough to promote. I appreciate the clarification. Don't do this, Rick. Take the weekend. Think it over. Come back Monday, and we'll pretend this conversation never happened. He genuinely believed I would back down. Believed that threatening my reference would make me fold. I'll finish out my 2 weeks. Train Michael on anything he needs to know. Bill's face darkened. You'll train him? You think Michael needs training from someone who quits when things don't go his way? He's going to need to understand the federal compliance requirements, the security clearance protocols, the emergency procedures, unless you plan to figure all that out yourself. That hit home. Bill knew he didn't understand the technical side of operations. Neither did Michael. They needed me, at least for 2 more weeks. Fine, 2 weeks, but don't expect any favors. Don't expect me to help you land somewhere else. You're burning bridges here, Rick. I nodded and turned to leave. Rick, Bill called after me, you're making a mistake, a big one. I stopped at the door. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Monday morning brought revelations. I arrived early as usual and found Michael already at his desk looking overwhelmed. He had spreadsheets open on 3 monitors and was frantically taking notes from contractor emails. Morning, Michael. How's the transition going? He looked relieved. Rick, thank God. I've been here since 6 trying to understand the Westfield Air Base contract. Their project manager is threatening to halt construction if we don't resolve some compliance issue by noon. Westfield Air Base, our biggest contract. They ordered facility construction worth $12.5 million annually. I'd been managing their account personally for 5 years, building the relationship through reliable service and understanding their security requirements. What's the issue? Something about delayed steel beam certifications from our supplier in Austin, but I can't figure out which supplier and their emails are confusing. I looked at Michael's screen. He had Westfield's email open, but he was also looking at supplier contracts that had nothing to do with steel beam certifications. He was drowning. Michael, did your dad brief you on the Westfield account? He said you'd handle the transition, but then he mentioned your situation and I thought maybe I should figure it out. Myself. Show initiative. My situation. That's what they were calling it now. I spent the next 4 hours walking Michael through the Westfield relationship. Explained how their security requirements worked, why they needed certified materials delivered within specific timeframes, how their construction schedule would collapse if we missed deadlines. Showed him the backup supplier network I'd built over 5 years. Helped him understand why a simple certification delay could cascade into a contract cancellation. This is incredibly complex, Michael said as we finished resolving the crisis. How do you keep track of all these moving parts? Experience and good documentation. Could you show me your documentation system? That's when I realized something. Bill hadn't just promoted Michael without preparation. He'd promoted him without understanding what the job actually required. Michael wasn't incompetent, but he was completely unprepared for the scope of regional operations. The kid had potential, smart, eager to learn, asked good questions once he understood the basics. But 4 months of observation doesn't prepare you for managing multi-million-dollar government contracts with zero margin for error. I spent my lunch break making phone calls, reached out to contacts I'd built over the years. Word travels fast in defense construction, and people were already hearing about changes at Atlas. Some were concerned about continuity, others were curious about new opportunities. Rick, said Colonel Jennifer Martinez, the project manager who'd threatened to halt construction that morning, I heard rumors about management changes. Please tell me you're still handling our account for the next 2 weeks. After that, Michael Patterson will be your primary contact. Silence on the line. Patterson. As in Bill Patterson's son? That's right. Jesus, Rick. That kid called me this morning asking questions that made no sense. I thought he was new to the team, not replacing you. He's eager to learn. I don't have time to train Atlas's management. We've got construction deadlines to meet. If your company can't provide competent service, we'll find someone who can. That conversation repeated itself 5 times with 5 different major contracts. Westfield Air Base, Fort Hood expansion, all saying the same thing. By the end of the day, I had a clearer picture of what would happen after I left. Michael would struggle, contracts would get frustrated, Bill would panic and try to micromanage operations he didn't understand. The whole regional division would start bleeding contracts within 8 months. But that wasn't my problem anymore. Tuesday morning, Bill called me into his office. He looked tired, stressed. "Rick, I've been thinking about our conversation Friday. Maybe we were hasty. Maybe there's room for both you and Michael in management. Meaning, you could be associate director, Michael's second in command. You'd handle the technical side, he'd focus on strategic planning, associate director. A made-up title that meant doing the same job for the same pay while pretending Michael was my boss. That's generous, but I'll stick with my original decision." Bill's face hardened. "You're going to regret this, Rick. I promise you that." "Maybe. But I'm done living in fear of your promises." By Wednesday, I had 4 job interviews scheduled. My plan went beyond simply leaving Atlas. I'd spent 7 years building relationships in the Texas Defense Construction Network. Those relationships were mine, not the company's. My first interview was Thursday morning with Liberty Defense Contractors, a veteran-owned construction company based in Houston. Their regional manager, Tom Bradley, had been trying to recruit me for 3 years. "Rick," Tom said as we shook hands in his office, "I heard through the grapevine that you might be available. Word travels fast. It does when good people become available, especially people with your security clearance and client relationships." Tom's office had the usual veteran stuff. Marine Corps flag, photos from Afghanistan, challenge coins on his desk. You know the type. Guys who understand that military service means something, that earning respect matters more than having the right last name. Tom offered me a position as Regional Operations Director, the exact title Bill had given to Michael. The salary was 40% higher than what I'd been making at Atlas, from $85,000 to $120,000. The benefits were better, and most importantly, they wanted me to bring my client network with me. "We've been trying to break into the military facility construction market," Tom explained. "Your relationships with Westfield Air Base, Fort Hood, and the other installations would be invaluable. It was ethical, standard industry practice. Contracts followed project managers they trusted, especially in a relationship-based business like defense construction. I hadn't signed a non-compete agreement, and the military installations were free to choose their contractors. I'd need to give Atlas 2 weeks' notice, of course. Professional courtesy, though I suspect they might release you early once they understand the situation." Tom was right about that. Friday afternoon, Bill called me into his office again. Michael sat in the corner looking miserable. Apparently word of my Thursday interview had reached them. "I hear you're interviewing with competitors," Bill said. "I'm exploring opportunities. While you're still employed here, while you're training Michael, that's a conflict of interest." I stayed quiet. It's also corporate espionage, sharing proprietary information with competitors. I haven't shared any proprietary information. Your client relationships are proprietary. My client relationships are personal. I built them over 7 years of professional service. Bill's face was red now. "Those contracts belong to Atlas Construction. You take them with you, and we'll sue you for everything you're worth." Michael spoke up from the corner. "Dad, maybe we should—" "Shut up, Michael." Bill didn't take his eyes off me. "Rick, you walk out that door and try to steal our contracts. I'll make sure you never work in this industry again." I stood up slowly. "Bill, I've given you 7 years of my life. Perfect performance reviews, 60-hour weeks. I trained your son to take the job you promised me. I've been nothing but professional through this entire process. And now you're threatening me. I'm protecting my business. I'm finishing my 2 weeks' notice and moving on to a better opportunity. What happens after that depends on how you handle the transition." Bill leaned back in his chair. "We'll see about that." I walked to the door, then turned back. "Michael, if you need help with anything over the next week, just ask. Despite what your father thinks, I want you to succeed." Michael nodded gratefully. Bill glared. I spent my last week at Atlas documenting everything Michael would need to know. Not because Bill deserved it, but because Michael was 25 years old and had been thrown into a situation beyond his control. The people who depended on our construction projects deserved better than chaos. The kid actually had potential once you got past the inexperience. Asked smart questions, took detailed notes, understood the technical aspects faster than I expected. Problem was, he needed about 2 years of mentoring to handle the job Bill had dumped on him. On my final day, I cleaned out my desk, said goodbye to coworkers, and handed Bill my security badge. "This isn't over," Bill said. "For me it is," I replied. I walked out of Atlas Construction feeling lighter than I had in years. Starting at Liberty Defense was like coming home. Tom Bradley ran the company like a military unit. Mission first, take care of your people, earn your rank. No family connections, no MBA preference, just results. My first week, Tom introduced me to the leadership team. All veterans, Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force. Guys who understood that leadership meant serving the people under you, not the other way around. "We got your security clearance transferred," Tom said. "Full access to classified projects. That puts you ahead of most of the competition." The security clearance was key. Takes months to get approved, and most companies won't wait. Having an active clearance made me immediately valuable to any defense contractor. Within 30 days, I was managing 3 major proposals for government projects. Liberty Defense specialized in the kind of work Atlas never touched: classified facilities, high-security installations, projects that required top-level clearances and absolute reliability. The money was better, but more important was the respect. Tom treated me like a professional, not a worker bee. When I had ideas about improving processes, he listened. When I recommended strategy changes, he implemented them. When I needed resources for my team, he provided them. My first major win came 6 weeks after starting. Westfield Air Base put out a request for proposals on a $15 million communications facility expansion. Classified project, tight timeline, zero tolerance for mistakes. Colonel Martinez called me directly. "Rick, we're considering Liberty Defense for the Westfield expansion. Can your new company handle something this complex?" "Absolutely. I've got the team and the clearances." "Good. Because we're not impressed with Atlas's recent performance. Quality control issues, missed deadlines, communication problems. We need contractors who understand military standards. That contract put Liberty Defense on the map for major government work. More importantly, it proved that clients follow competence, not company names." Tommy visited that weekend, first time since I'd changed jobs. He noticed the difference immediately. "You look better, Dad, less stressed, new job's working out." He nodded toward my laptop, closed for once on a Saturday afternoon. "You're not working weekends anymore?" "Don't need to. Companies run right. People do their jobs. Things get done during business hours." That's when I knew I'd made the right decision, not just for my career, but for my life. 3 months into the job, Tom called me into his office with news that would change everything. "Rick, you need to see this," Tom said, sliding a trade magazine across his desk. The headline read, "Atlas Construction Regional Division loses major contracts. Nepotism investigation launched." 9 months had passed since I'd walked out of Atlas Construction. I was settling into my new role at Liberty Defense, managing a team of 12 engineers and overseeing $45 million in active government contracts. The article detailed how Atlas had lost 6 major contracts in 8 months, including Westfield Air Base and Fort Hood expansion. Revenue in the Texas region was down 45%. The board had launched an investigation into hiring practices. "Bill Patterson was terminated last week," Tom said. "Apparently, the board discovered that Michael Patterson had been promoted without proper qualifications. Compliance violations, they're calling it." I read further. Michael had resigned voluntarily after 4 months of struggling with contracts he couldn't manage. He'd returned to graduate school for construction management. According to the article, Bill faced lawsuits from Westfield Air Base for breach of contract after a compliance failure caused a construction delay that cost them $1.8 million. "Here's the interesting part," Tom continued. 4 of their remaining contracts have already reached out to us, specifically asking if you're available to handle their projects. The article mentioned that several former Atlas employees had been recruited by competitors, taking their institutional knowledge with them. No names were listed, but I recognized the pattern. When good people leave a company, others notice. "What goes around comes around," Tom said. "Bill Patterson spent 7 years taking you for granted. Now he's unemployed while you're building our Texas division." I folded the magazine and handed it back. "Feel bad for Michael. Kid got thrown into a situation he wasn't ready for. Michael will be fine. He's young. He'll learn from this." "Bill, on the other hand," Tom shrugged. "Hard to feel sorry for someone who threw away good people to promote family." The revenge was sweeter than I'd expected, but it wasn't personal satisfaction that mattered most. It was professional vindication. The clients who'd trusted me for years followed that trust to Liberty Defense. They understood the difference between earned competence and inherited position. Colonel Martinez called me the next week. "Rick, we're putting together a 5-year master facilities plan for Westfield. $80 million in construction projects. Liberty Defense interested? Absolutely. I'll put together a proposal team." Good, because we need contractors who understand military standards. Atlas taught us what happens when you prioritize family connections over professional competence. That single conversation represented more business than Atlas's entire regional division handled in a typical year. Military clients don't forget competence, and they don't tolerate incompetence. Bill's decision to promote Michael hadn't just cost him his job, it had destroyed Atlas's reputation in the defense construction community. 6 months later, I was driving through Dallas on business when I stopped for lunch at a diner near the airport. Michael Patterson was sitting alone in a corner booth, reading a textbook. He looked up when I approached. "Rick, what are you doing here?" "Business trip. Mind if I sit?" He gestured to the empty seat across from him. Michael looked older, more serious. The textbook was Construction Project Management. "Back in school?" "Master's program at Texas A&M, Construction Management Focus." He smiled ruefully. "Figured I should actually learn what I was supposed to be doing." "That's smart. I wanted to thank you," Michael said, "for how you handled everything. You could have hung me out to dry, but you didn't. You tried to help me succeed. You were in an impossible situation. Dad still blames you for everything. Says you sabotaged the company." I sipped my coffee. "What do you think?" Michael closed his textbook. "I think I was 25 years old with an MBA and no real-world experience. I think Dad gave me a job I wasn't qualified for because I was family. And I think you spent 7 years earning a promotion that should have been yours." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. "I'm sorry about how everything went down," Michael said. "You deserved better. We both did. But sometimes things work out the way they're supposed to." Michael nodded. "I heard you're doing well at Liberty Defense." "I am. And you'll do well too, once you're ready." I paid for both our lunches and shook Michael's hand before leaving. He was a good kid who'd been used as a pawn in his father's game. 8 months later, Bill Patterson filed for bankruptcy after losing his wrongful termination lawsuit against Atlas's board of directors. The court ruled that nepotistic hiring practices violated his employment contract and company policies. His severance package was revoked, and he was ordered to pay legal fees. Michael graduated with honors from Texas A&M and landed an entry-level position at a construction company in Austin, where he spent 3 years learning the business from the ground up before earning his first promotion based on merit. Tommy finished community college and transferred to University of Texas on an academic scholarship. The kid was proud of his dad for finally standing up for himself. "You taught me something important," he said. "Don't let people take advantage of you just because you need the job." The alimony payments ended when my ex-wife remarried, giving me financial freedom I hadn't experienced in years. I bought a small ranch outside Houston, close enough to commute but far enough to have peace and quiet on weekends. Liberty Defense promoted me to Vice President of Operations after 18 months. Tom Bradley retired and recommended me as his replacement for Regional Director. The board approved unanimously. "You earned this," Tom said at his retirement party. "No family connections, no MBA preference, just results. Sometimes the best revenge is simply walking away and building something better." Bill Patterson thought he could use my loyalty against me, thought I'd accept scraps because I had bills to pay. He learned the hard way that competence travels and incompetence gets exposed. The son had learned what the father never understood, that respect and advancement must be earned, not inherited. As I tell my team now, your reputation follows you everywhere. Build it carefully, protect it fiercely, and never let anyone convince you to settle for less than you've earned.